Thank you for joining our session, Here, There, Everywhere, Hybrid Active Directory Monitoring and Management. My name's Pete DiStefano. I'm joined by my colleagues, Chris Bowie and Ashley Adams. How you guys doing?
Yeah, really good, Pete. Thanks for having us, everyone. And in the Thwack universe, we're excited to be here.
Yes, thanks so much for joining, guys.
So the three of us, we're going to be breaking down Active Directory monitoring and management into two areas. First of all, the health and performance of Active Directory, and second, secure management and provisioning of Active Directory. What we really want to communicate today is there's really two very specific things that are necessary when managing your Active Directory environment to make sure that it's healthy and performant as well as secure when provisioning access rights. Chris, I can't tell you how many times people focus on one thing or the other, but they don't focus on both. For example, if I've got a really healthy and performant Active Directory, but I've got major provisioning issues, it doesn't matter how fast the application is.
Yeah, and I'd say the same goes for if you do a really great job managing your Active Directory, but if you don't provide adequate capacity, or if the application fails or runs really slowly.
Exactly. Matter of fact, that's why we want to call these two very important disciplines out today. Matter of fact, we will be talking about products. I'll be sharing information about how Server and Application Monitor, or SAM, can help mitigate the challenges associated with making sure that you have a healthy and performant Active Directory. Chris, on the other hand, she's going to cover the other side of the fence. She's going to cover how you can make sure you have a very secure provisioning of your access rights. But wait a minute, Ashley, what are you going to do?
Well, thanks for that, Pete. I actually am going to come in at the end of this session. You'll have to stay tuned to find out, but I kind of fit into both camps, and we'll talk about how Security Event Manager helps with both of these ideas.
All right, before we get going, let's spend a little time talking about the state of Active Directory. Frost and Sullivan did a survey. These guys are always doing surveys on how much these products are implemented in the market. And of course, it says 90% of the global Fortune 1000 are using Active Directory. Like, duh. I know for those of you, if you're on this session, you're interested in Active Directory, you know how much it's proliferated throughout the industry. Now, Forrester also did this economic impact of securing apps with Azure AD. And they found after customer interviews, 123% ROI over a 3-year period, which was pretty impressive for Azure AD.
Wow, that's actually quite a big number. Does it feel like most organizations are all kind of migrating over to Azure AD then?
Well, obviously, there's a huge migration to the cloud. And yeah, there's a lot of growth with Azure AD, but now both of these products still play. Active Directory was designed for on-prem. Azure AD was designed for the cloud, right? And not only that, but it also takes advantage of the fact of all the years of learning they got from when Active Directory was first designed and came out. I think the most important thing for this, Ashley, is not about whether they're going to Azure AD or they're using Active Directory on-prem or some combination. I think what's most important is if you're using Active Directory in some form as your IDP, it is absolutely critical that it's performant, it's available, but it's also accurately provisioned, because either one of those things, if not done well, could really be a problem.
As well
Look,
as secure, right?
yeah, absolutely. So there's provisioning inadequately, and that could be a problem. But if you're provisioning to the wrong people, that could be devastating. You're absolutely right. Let's get into this thing. Let's start by talking about some of the challenges. And we all got together. We looked at what the market was saying, what some of our SolarWinds customers were saying about some of the big challenges that existed for Active Directory.
In your opinion, what would you say is the top Active Directory challenge that its users might be facing?
We've got several up here, but I tell you, time and time again, we've heard that DNS issues have probably been the biggest issue and continue to be one of the biggest issues with having a strong Active Directory environment and making sure that people have access to the things they need? That's a great question. So, in addition to the DNS, there's application issues, there's database issues, there's domain replication issues. Now, before you even get into all those issues, you got to have visibility. So, one of the biggest challenges is not just having visibility into the Active Directory application or the database, but having visibility into all the components that support the application and all of the components that the applications are giving access to. So you really do need a holistic view of all the things that can impact your application if Active Directory is not functioning correctly. Now, beyond the performance and the availability side of things, that's where you start looking at things like group policy issues, how well roles have been defined, if they've been defined at all, and then login issues. There's a lot of problems where if you don't have the proper access off and proper authentication, users can't log on. If they can't log in, then they can't, use the applications. So I'm going to get started here. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've used SolarWinds SAM, Server and Application Monitor, to help understand the health of our AD environment. We've used SAM to monitor the infrastructure, as I talked about, all the underlying infrastructure. That's been important. We've used it to manage all of our Microsoft applications. And for those of you familiar with SAM and all of the out-of-the-box templates, we've leveraged quite a bit of the out-of-the-box templates that come standard from Microsoft, including Active Directory. We love to use the Orion map capability to give quick visualizations of the status. I'm going to show one example we have in our demo environment. Getting to the root cause when there is an issue, being able to drill down. I personally love the combination of using the application stack that kind of helps me understand what's going on upstream and downstream from the application, but also using the perf stack. Perf stack lets me put the metrics side by side to really see what's causing an issue. And then finally, remediation. I'm not sure how much those folks that are on the call use SAM take advantage of remediation, but it can really be a time saver when we see an issue and we realize, oh my God, we have a service that's not running, we're going to restart it. And by the way, these are all things that SAM applies to all the different applications and infrastructure we monitor, but it also applies to Active Directory. I do want to show a couple of screenshots. What I'm showing you here right now is one of the SAM dashboards. And this is a SAM dashboard for Active Directory.
This is a great looking dashboard, Pete. What are some key areas you think that we should focus on here today?
What you see here, Chris, I could say it's the Active Directory application, it's the database, but really the key things we're showing here is all of the things associated with Active Directory. We use this to make sure that our Active Directory is up and running. And if there's an issue, it calls attention to it. For example, you can see here on that, you've got that red circle. We know, hey, let's drill down into that, or even the warning circle. Another example, Chris, similar to this, but looking at an Office 365 environment, this shows how we monitor both an on-prem Active Directory as well as an Active Directory in the cloud, the Azure Active Directory, and how we implement AD Connect, which makes sure your Azure AD and your on-prem AD stay in sync, so access rights are the same whether you're entering that authorization process through the cloud or through the on-prem legacy environment. The next thing I'm going to do here, and I'm going to switch over to go into that demo environment, is to talk about something that we call the App Insight for Active Directory. It's one of those many out-of-the-box templates I talked about that comes with SAM. And this is now talking specific to Active Directory. So we talked about challenges that exist. Well, right off the bat, you can see here, we're talking about the App Stack widget that at the top shows all the Active Directory applications running, and then all the underlying infrastructure, the servers, the virtual environment, the data storage, that are all responsible for supporting that Active Directory environment. As I scroll through the app insights, I see I've got replication status. Here I'm going to click, and it's going to tell me when the last replication failures were for each one of those domains. As I go further down, I've got now the domain controller details. This has given me insights into each of those domains, what roles they've been assigned, or if, in this case, none of these have been assigned roles. As you can see, as I go down, there's additional statistics about the nodes, events that have occurred where there has been some failures within the application, all the way down to user logins. So I just wanted to do a really quick snapshot to show you that SAM can help with the availability, the performance, and really the overall health of your Active Directory environment. Now I'd like to pass it over to Chris, and she's going to take you through the other side of the story that we wanted to share with you today. Chris?
Thanks, Pete. And just to reinforce all the great points that Pete was making, Active Directory and Azure AD function as the centralized system that really enables users and employees access to systems, applications, and the files that they need day to day. So whether accessing a document on OneDrive, printing on the on-network printer, using the internet, or even just simply checking email, these resources often need to go through Active Directory.
Yeah, if you don't have a handle on your Active Directory, if it's not secure, if it's not provisioning correctly, you're exposing your business to risk.
Unfortunately, yes, and that's why it's also not uncommon for bad actors to target Active Directory specifically, which is why to provision access rights simply and safely, you really need to look at permissions first. And it's essential to have visibility into who had access where, and ensure your users are only accessing areas they need to do their job.
Which sounds a lot like the principles of zero trust.
Exactly. So with this more cautious approach, you can help keep other areas off limits to protect the organization and the users themselves.
So, Chris, would you say that this applies to just larger scale, like enterprises that need to worry about having this level of visibility?
That's a great question. I would say that this applies to small and medium-sized businesses as well as larger enterprises that have to worry about resources and users all over the world. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, sorry, Pete, to cut you off there, securing access and permissions should really be kept in the forefront of your mind, no matter the size of your business.
No, you're right. And the reason I wanted to jump in is, a lot of people think, big, large enterprises, there's a lot at risk. And that's true, although they probably have more resources to recover. But small and medium businesses, you put your business at risk. It could be game over if you have a breach or if your application can't function as it needs to because people can't get the access they need.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd quickly just like to touch on some ways that SolarWinds Access Rights Manager can help with securing your Active Directory. ARM enables users to manage and audit access rights across the IT infrastructure, so you can simplify assigning permissions and tracking data across the network. It can also help reduce IT workload, which is great for all of us, by delegating permissions management directly to the data owners themselves.
I think this is really important because it's not only about keeping the IT infrastructure correctly provisioned, but also helping it to make it a little bit easier for the users themselves as well. Just having some of those logins helps them to make sure that they're accessing the right files with seamless ease of use.
Yes, definitely. And once a user's been set up, you might be required to know down the line where they have access. So I'm just going to go quickly into a screenshot here. And the user in this scenario, Anthony Admin, he wants to know where Emily Employee has access. By just typing her name in the search bar, he's able to then see which files and groups she has access to. So really, in addition to being able to see where a user or group has access, you also can leverage the custom report generation features, which allow for the quick creation of a variety of Active Directory reports. So let's just imagine for a second, appropriate permission policies have been implemented across the board. Really great job. So the next step would be to have a deeper ability to monitor Active Directory activity. And Ashley is going to discuss Security Event Manager, which really straddles both of the disciplines mentioned by P and I. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Chris. So this has been really great information and really lays the groundwork for the last step that we want to highlight in this process. And essentially, taking a small amount of time to practice some prevention can really be the cure to having a really performant as well as secure environment. And we've basically covered that the health and performance of your AD environment is step one. How you properly provision it comes in secondly. And now we're looking at how you can really make it secure.
Yeah, and again, at the risk of being a broken record, but at the end of the day, if your AD is not secure, if you're accurately provisioning, you're hosed. Your business is in trouble. You're at risk.
It's true. That's right, Pete.
Would you mind just giving everyone a refresher, Ashley, on what we mean when we're talking about zero trust?
Wait. I want to take a cut at this.
Okay.
So for years, we host Thanksgiving at my house. My wife makes 2 homemade pumpkin pies. And I'm not sure how she does it because I've tried, but within moments of it coming out of the oven, it ends up being hidden in another room in the house. Now, I think she has zero trust in my capability not to touch those pies before the company comes. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, it is a little bit what we're talking about. It's a good example because probably several of the people on this call are familiar with the zero trust framework. But what we care about in this instance is it's protecting the entire perimeter of your environment, or in Pete's case, the kitchen, by not trusting anyone by default, even if they're inside the network or even inside the family, right? So, as Chris mentioned before, just because somebody is internal doesn't mean that they need access to C-level files or HR files. And when we're looking at this wheel, we're talking about again, assessing that risk, which includes taking the inventory of the systems, and then B, moving into monitoring the health and performance of your environment by managing risk. And that's all about setting up those identities and profiles. Who needs access to what? So what type of resources they're actually accessing, and then even the level of access privilege on those resources themselves. And that's setting us up for talking about how we want to contain risk. And that's what SolarWinds Security Event Manager can help with. It does this by detecting, monitoring, and responding. So A, detecting unusual security events. B, responding to those by either blocking or allowing them as appropriate, if the case may be. And overall, having that monitoring to report and then adapt policies as they change over time. So what's great about SIEM is that it does monitor the Active Directory events, and you can use it to look at things like user account creation and deletion, be alerted on security group creation or deletions, and user logons and logon failures, like we've mentioned before. Being able to identify and respond to those threats faster, so simplifying the incident response process. And then also giving a level of compliance. So compliance reporting that you have with some predefined templates like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or SOX, for example. Many organizations today have a real need for oversight and visibility, which who is accessing their resources and when. They may need to actually prove those in reporting to meet requirements for compliance standards. And then last, having some actionable insights to help avoid that suspicious behavior if something does go awry. So having some tools in your belt like File Integrity Monitor, for example, which would highlight when any changes were being made to a file by a user, as well as USB Defender, which can instantly and remotely block unauthorized USBs that are plugged into any device on the network. So same as before, we're going to just show a couple screenshots here of the ways SIEM can help out with these things. You can see the colorful, lovely HTML5 interface, and there are lots of metrics displayed in a variety of ways. But what we want to focus on today as an example related to Active Directory is logon failures. So this is quite a common problem in organizations we see all the time. And sometimes it might be hard to identify if Billy Bob employee just didn't have his morning cup of coffee and wake up with enough energy to remember his password, or if it's actually a real suspicious actor from somewhere outside the organization sitting 7,000 miles away, or even worse, if it's a suspicious actor from the inside.
Hey, Ashley, I got a question for you. When it comes to thinking about either internal accidental issues that put us at risk versus bad guys that are trying to get in, it doesn't sound like one or the other is better or worse. They both seem to be bad things that can have an impact on a company. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that's why the whole zero trust principle is there, is to make sure that you're protecting yourself as much from the inside as you are from the outside. And something that SIM helps with in that instance is looking at trends over time with historical data. For example, you can see on this screenshot too that there are several different ways to monitor potentially suspicious behavior. So if you're looking at successful logins by a user, maybe the admin who's running regularly running this tool knows that this looks like a normal everyday morning style trend. But if you see the login failures, you can look at that by a specific user or even things like a source machine. Perhaps in the organization, they have several users with access to one centralized machine. But I want to drill down into focusing on what a login failure looks like by a user. And if we drill into the details, you can see clearly displayed information. And that's going to help whoever's running this tool to decide if it is a simple user error that just needs a simple password reset, or if it's truly suspicious behavior. You can see on the panel, it will display things like what type of event it is exactly and the IP address it came from, helping that admin to make the right call here. So SIM at the end of the day is really stepping in to close the loop with secure and continuous monitoring in relation to this whole process.
Wow. That's great. What the three of us really want to communicate, and I know we shared a lot about three of the SolarWinds products, but monitoring your AD's application and its supporting infrastructure to make sure it's healthy and performant, that's good, but that's not enough. Putting all your energy into making sure that you're securely provisioning access rights, that you're complying with zero trust policies, not the pumpkin pie policy, but the one that Ashley talked about, that's not enough. You got to do both of these things. So, takeaways from this session again, I know we talked about three products. The only thing I'd impress upon you from a SolarWinds perspective, if you've already invested in these products, you've already spent the money, you can leverage these products to do a better job monitoring your Active Directory environment. If you don't have these products, don't care how you do it. I don't think there's anything more important than making sure that your IDP, and if Active Directory is your IDP, that you make sure that you put all your energy into making sure it's healthy and performant, but it's also secure and accurately being provisioned. So, regardless of what your implementation is, whether it's a hybrid combination of AD and Azure or one of each, bottom line is the way we see it, technology has become such an enabler to business and it's become such a big, important part of business. But if you don't start with that foundation of having the proper access to systems and users and devices, then you can either be in a high stress environment, high risk environment, and basically just waiting for the next shoe to drop, or you can be an IT organization that's highly leveraging a very secure and effective IT implementation. And that's what we want you to take away from this session. Thank you all for spending 25 minutes with us. I hope you found this valuable. Thank you, Chris and Ashley, for sharing. And anything else you'd like to share with the group before we end our session?
Pete, I think you wrapped it up beautifully for us. I would just say to everyone out there, take a little time to reduce your overall risk and stay performant, help you to sleep better at night, and stay safe out there, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate, we really appreciate everyone taking the time today and joining us. We had a lot of fun doing this session. So thanks again.